This is how a normal person turns the rent versus own decision into an extra $300,000 by the time they're 50. Not by picking the right side of the debate, there isn't one, but by running the decision like a business decision instead of an emotional one. That's the number that changes everything. I started out renting a one-bedroom for $1,100 a month at 23, sitting on about $15,000 saved. Bought my first place 4 years later with $51,000 in the bank. Today, between what that first house turned into and what I didn't waste chasing a bigger one too soon, my housing decisions are worth close to $600,000 more than the average path most people take. Not because I picked owning over renting or renting over owning, because I picked the numbers over the narrative. Let's be straight about what $300,000 actually gets you, because I'm not trying to hype this up. It's not a private jet. It's not quitting forever. What it is the difference between a mortgage payment that owns you and one you barely notice. It's being able to take a pay cut for a job you actually want, or help your kid through college without panicking, or retire 5 years earlier than the guy next door making the same salary you do. That's what this buys. Breathing room, not luxury. And yeah, the earlier you get this right, the bigger the payoff, because whether it's home equity or invested cash, time is doing most of the heavy lifting here, not you. But I don't care if you're 24 and renting with 2 roommates, or you're 52 and just now realizing the house you bought in your 30s was the wrong move. Every step on this list still applies to you starting today. So here's the deal. 6 steps. No fluff, no renting is throwing money away nonsense, no vague just build equity advice. The specific, concrete moves that actually separate the people who come out ahead from the people who just default into a decision because it's what their parents did. Before we get into it, comment below whether you're currently renting, owning, or stuck deciding, and roughly how long you've been in that spot. No judgment either way, I just want to see where people are starting from. Step 1. Run the actual comparison, not the payment comparison. Almost everybody compares their rent check to a mortgage payment and calls it a day, and that's the number one reason this decision gets botched. A mortgage payment isn't the cost of owning, property tax, insurance, and maintenance are on top of it, and maintenance alone should be budgeted at around 1% of the home's value every year. On a $350,000 house, that's $3,500 annually before anything even breaks. Add in 2 to 5% of the purchase price in closing costs up front. Once you put the full cost of owning against the full cost of renting plus investing the difference, the answer flips in a lot of markets from what people assume walking in. Run a real rent versus buy calculator before you do anything else on this list. Step 2. Size your down payment to protect you, not just to hit 20% for the sake of it. 20% avoids private mortgage insurance, which on a $300,000 loan runs somewhere around $150 to $250 a month for coverage that protects the lender, not you. But don't go to zero doing it. Keep 4 to 6 months of expenses in cash after closing. Because something breaks in the first 90 days, guaranteed, I put down $48,000 on my first house and kept $9,000 sitting in reserve. 2 months later, the sewer line needed work. $3,200. Reserve fund covered it without touching a credit card. Step 3. Buy the house that fits your actual life, not the one your approval letter says you can afford. Getting approved for $400,000 is the bank's estimate of the max you could survive, not a target. Aim to spend 70 to 80% of what you're approved for. If the letter says 320, you're shopping in the 240 to 255 range. I bought at about 75% of my approval, which meant my payment stayed low enough that I kept maxing out retirement contributions the entire time I owned the place, instead of being cash poor with granite countertops. Quick detour here, because this is exactly where people go chasing shortcuts. Flipping houses for quick money, no money down strategies, trying to time the exact bottom of the market, skip all of it. Flipping successfully is a full-time skilled trade with contractor networks most people don't have, and for every flip you see profiting on camera there are 5 quietly losing money off camera. And nobody, including professional economists, times the housing market with any consistency. Buy when your life is stable. That's the only timing signal that actually matters. Step 4. Don't buy unless you can commit to staying put 3 to 5 years, minimum transaction costs, buying and selling combined, run roughly 8 to 10% of the home's value. Sell in year 1 or 2 and you can lose money on the deal even if the home appreciated, purely from those costs eating the gain. This is the exact trap that catches people who buy right after a job move or a relationship starts, when life isn't settled yet. The house isn't the problem in those cases. The timing is. Step 5, and this one's for anybody renting right now. Because renting isn't the losing move here. Not investing the gap is. If the math from step 1 says renting wins where you live, then rent, and take whatever the difference is between a mortgage payment and your rent, and automatically invest it every month into a low-cost index fund. This is the step almost everybody skips. They rent because it's the smarter financial call, and then they spend the savings on lifestyle instead of investing it, and a decade later they've got nothing to show for a decision that should have built real wealth. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, okay, but I genuinely don't know how to actually build this plan for my specific numbers, that's fair. This part trips up a lot of people. And it's the exact thing I do one-on-one with folks. I've got a handful of coaching spots open where we sit down with your real numbers and your real market and build the actual plan instead of a general framework. Links below if you want to apply. Not for everyone, no pressure, but it's there if you want it. Step 6. The hardest one. Once the money starts showing up, equity building or an investment account climbing, do not upgrade your life to match it. This is where I've watched more people quietly torch their progress than anywhere else on this list. They build $60,000 in equity and immediately pull a home equity line to renovate and buy a truck. Or their brokerage account crosses 6 figures and suddenly there's a bigger apartment and a nicer car. I drove the same car for 6 years after my equity crossed into 6 figures. It was boring. It's also why the next house I bought with a down payment that made the mortgage almost irrelevant to my monthly budget. The people who actually win this game rarely look like it from the outside, so if you remember nothing else, run the real comparison, not the payment comparison. Size your down payment to protect you, not just to hit a percentage. Buy what fits your life, not your approval letter. Commit to 3 to 5 years before you buy. Invest the gap automatically if you're renting. And don't upgrade your lifestyle once the numbers start moving. Zoom out for a second. Say that $300,000 gap actually happens for you, whichever path gets you there, and you just leave it alone for another 20 years at a reasonable market return instead of touching it. That's not $300,000 anymore. That's pushing towards 7 figures off one decision made with real numbers instead of guesswork, and then left completely alone. And before you go looking for the exciting version of this, the guy selling a course on stacking 20 rental properties with none of your own money, ask how many of those properties he's still holding 2 years later. And how many of his students actually pulled it off versus just bought the course. Boring and correct beats clever and risky every time in this specific game. I know run the numbers and don't inflate your lifestyle isn't a thrilling answer, but it's the one that actually works, and it's open to basically anyone watching this video right now regardless of where you're starting. Do the math, make the call that fits your actual life, and then leave it alone. I want to see you win this one. See you in the next one.